Welcome to your Money Q&A question of the day. I am your host, Stacy Johnson, and this question is brought to you by MoneyTalksNews.com. We've been doing personal finance news and advice since 1991, an eternity. Okay, here's our question for today. It's from Judy. Judy says, I get your oft-repeated message to manage your own finances. Subtract your age from 100, use that number for percent to put into an S&P tracking index fund. Divide the remainder by 2. Put half in a bond fund and half into a cash fund. But here's what she wants. She says, take it a step further. How to decide on which funds to put the money into. Okay, for those of you who haven't watched me for very long, because I do say this a lot, let me explain what's going on here. People say, how do I invest my long-term savings? I say, take your age from 100 and then put that percentage into a stock mutual fund. Take what's left, divide it into 2 parts, put half into a cash fund, like a money market, and half into a bond fund. Let's give an example. I'm 62, but let's say I'm 60 to make the math easy. 60 from 100 is 40. I'd have 40% of my long-term savings in a S&P 500 index fund. I've got 60% left. 30% of that is going to go into a money market fund, and the last 30% is going to go into a bond fund. Now, what Judy is asking me to do is tell her exactly which funds. She wants to be more specific. Okay, here's what I use personally. I use Vanguard Funds. So for my stock investment, I use the Vanguard 500 Index Fund. Now, the reason I use Vanguard is not because I work for them or get paid by them. It's because they have the lowest fees. It's one of the largest mutual funds in the world, if not the largest. So the fees are very low. That's why I use them. There are other funds you can use that do the same thing. You might have to pay a little bit more, but maybe not, or not much more, enough to matter. But that's the one I use personally. Okay, for bonds, I again go to Vanguard. I use their intermediate or their short-term bond index fund. Now, at this moment, I would probably use their short-term fund. Doesn't pay quite as much as intermediate, but if interest rates rise, which I expect them to do, it probably won't get hurt as much. Because, bond funds don't do well in rising interest rate environments. So I'm probably going to take that short-term bond index fund or the intermediate, but Vanguard is where I would go. Now for money market, your cash part, I don't know that I would be at Vanguard because their money market funds are very low. So for that, I might use an online bank or a credit union. Because, I see, and you can go to MoneyTalksNews.com, go to the Solution Center, and they compare, a lot of different banks for you to see who's paying the most interest. And you can get 1.5%, and Vanguard's not paying that on money market funds. So for that cash portion, I might just use the bank or a credit union. Judy, I hope that answers your question. I hope everyone else learned a little something too. If you've got a question of your own, here's what I want you to do. Just subscribe to the Money Talks newsletter, and then when you get it in your inbox, just hit reply, ask your question. We don't answer them all because we don't have time, but you might just see your question right here. And in the meantime, I want you guys to have a super profitable day, and I'll see you next time.